Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the news from SABA satellite channel from Marib. Here are tonight's top stories.
President Al-Alimi chairs a meeting with government and local governors on reforms and security.
Yemen participates in FAO Near East ministerial meeting in Rome.
Egyptian President Al-Sisi reaffirms support for Arab security, backs Gaza ceasefire efforts.
Welcome back. President Dr. Rashad Al-Alimi, President of the Presidential Leadership Council, chaired a smaller meeting in Riyadh with the government and governors of liberated governorates. The meeting focused on national developments and ways to strengthen coordination between the government and local authorities to improve living conditions, basic services, and the presence of state institutions at all levels. The meeting approved the continued closure of unlicensed ports and crossings until legal standards are met, and called for closer coordination in combating terrorism financing, smuggling, and organized crime. President Al-Alimi also directed the Ministries of Electricity, Oil and Finance to prepare a plan to secure fuel for power stations ahead of the summer season. He praised progress in the reform program, including the state budget, government priorities, and the activation of institutions such as the Wounded Authority and the Health Fund, while stressing that these gains require stronger anti-corruption, follow-up, and financial discipline measures to be sustained.
Yemen took part in the ministerial meeting of the 38th session of the Food and Agriculture Organization Regional Conference for the Near East in Rome, with the delegation headed by the Minister of Agriculture, Irrigation and Fisheries, Salim Al-Suqatri. In Yemen's address at the opening session, Al-Suqatri said agricultural and food systems face growing pressure that requires more integrated and sustainable approaches, especially in fragile countries affected by climate, economic and geopolitical shocks. He stressed the importance of linking agriculture, water and energy to improve efficiency and sustain production, and said developing agricultural and fishery supply chains remains government priority. Al-Suqatri also called for a shift in international support from short-term humanitarian response to long-term sustainable development investment, particularly in productive sectors such as agriculture, fisheries, while strengthening coordination among partner interventions for a greater development impact.
Under the sidelines of the conference in Rome, Minister Salim Al-Suqatri met Chu Dongyu, Director General of the FAO, to discuss stronger cooperation and support for Yemen's agricultural and food sectors. During the meeting, Al-Suqatri reviewed the impact of regional developments on agricultural and food systems in fragile countries, especially Yemen. He said Yemen's current phase requires a shift from scattered emergency support toward longer-term development projects that strengthen resilience and food security. He also highlighted the ministry's national strategies for agriculture, food security and plant protection for the period 2023 to 2030. For his part, Chu Dongyu said the food security in Yemen remains a priority for the organization and pointed to continued coordination with international partners to support development projects and joint climate-related programs.
Also on the sidelines of the FAO conference, Minister Al-Suqatri met Anisa Tarablisi, chair of the Committee on the World Food Security. During the meeting, the two sides discussed ways to strengthen relations between Yemen and the committee. Al-Suqatri said Yemen's crisis requires stronger cooperation and coordination with the committee and the wider international community through a strategic partnership that links humanitarian action, development, and peace building. He said that approach would support a gradual shift from emergency response to sustainable recovery and stronger resilience for local communities. For his part, Tarablus stressed the importance of closer cooperation and affirmed that the committee is committed to preserving progress in applying its framework for food security and nutrition in Yemen and other protracted crises.
Indian Human Rights Minister Mishdal Mohammed met with Abdel Sattar Swave, head of mission of the International Organization for Migration in Yemen, to discuss stronger humanitarian cooperation, especially on migration. The meeting reviewed ways to strengthen partnership and coordination between the government and the organization in response to migrant flows. with a focus on improving protection and humanitarian services in line with international human rights standards. Minister Mishdal said the government considers this file a priority under the current conditions, while Deputy Minister Nabil Abdul Hafid said continued arrivals from the Horn of Africa, alongside internal displacement, are increasing pressure on services and resources and require stronger coordination for a more effective response. For his part, ISWAVE said the organization is committed to expanding cooperation with the government, particularly in healthcare and protection support for migrants.
Also in Aden, Minister of Industry and Trade Mohammed Al-Ashwal met Bassem Dabwan, head of the Financial Information Unit at the Central Bank, to discuss stronger institutional coordination and broader cooperation in combating money laundering and terrorism financing. Al-Ashwal said coordination between regulatory and oversight bodies is essential to protect the national economy, strengthen transparency, and support confidence in the investment climate. He also stressed the ministry's commitment to updating regulatory frameworks and improving compliance and oversight systems in line with economic developments. For his part, Dabwani praised the level of the cooperation with the ministry, saying it had helped prepare specialized supervisory instruction for several high-risk sectors, including legal, accounting, and insurance.
Yemen participated in an emergency ministerial meeting of the Arab League with a delegation led by Deputy Foreign Minister Mustafa Nu'man to discuss the Iranian attacks on Arab states and the resulting legal obligations under international law. In Yemen's address, Nu'man said the region faces serious security challenges and called for stronger Arab coordination in response. He said threats to key waterways, including the Strait of Hormuz and Bab al-Mandab, affect energy security, trade routes, and wider regional stability. He also said restoring the Yemeni state and strengthening government control remains central to securing the Red Sea. The meeting later issued a resolution rejecting the attacks, holding Iran legally responsible for the resulting losses, and condemning threats to measures aimed at closing the Strait of Hormuz and obstructing freedom of navigation there.
In Aden, Deputy Foreign Minister Mustafa Nu'man met Laurent Bouquera, identified in the source as the acting United Nations resident coordinator, to discuss stronger cooperation and the latest developments in Yemen. Nu'man praised the role of the United Nations in supporting Yemen and said the government is committed to continued coordination to ease humanitarian suffering and improve the program carried out by United Nations agencies. He also expressed appreciation for the work for former resident coordinator Julian Harness in coordinating humanitarian action and strengthened partnership with the government. The meeting also covered support for refugee protection, mine action, and preparations for population census. For his part, Bouquera said the United Nations remains committed to working with the government and partners to support recovery and reconstruction efforts.
And in our regional news, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said Egypt fully rejects and condemns what he described as unjustified attacks on Gulf Arab states and other Arab countries, and reaffirmed Cairo's full support for Arab security as part of Egypt's national security. He made the remarks during a joint press conference with Finnish President Alexander Stubb, where the two leaders discussed regional and international developments, especially in the Middle East. Al-Sisi said the talks stressed the need for continued coordination among partners to support regional and international stability. He also welcomed the current truce, describing it as a positive step toward containing escalation and creating space for diplomacy. On Gaza, he said attention must remain on conditions in the Strip and the West Bank, and called for intensified efforts to secure a ceasefire and implement what he described as the second phase of the Gaza plan.
That was the news bulletin from SABA satellite channel. Thank you for watching and have a good time.
Have a good time.